I thought I knew everything about my husband, until he died and left me a letter that almost made me spill my tea all over my lap. It was a quiet afternoon in my small Vermont home, the kind where time seemed to move slower. Outside, the autumn leaves danced in the crisp air, and the only sounds were the distant chirping of birds and the occasional creak of my rocking chair. It had been a year since Richard passed, and though I had learned to live with the silence, some days it still felt unbearably loud. Grief is a peculiar thing. Some days it's soft, like a gentle ache reminding you of what once was. Other days, it hits you like a punch to the gut, when you catch yourself setting out 2 cups of coffee instead of 1, or when you find an old sweater that still carries his scent. That afternoon, I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for space. My attic had become a neglected museum of Richard's habits. Piles of old newspapers, half-fixed radios, and a box labeled string important, which to this day remains one of life's greatest mysteries. And then I found it, a small wooden box tucked away behind a stack of books. It wasn't ornate or significant in any way, but something about it made my stomach tighten. When I opened it, I found a few keepsakes, movie tickets from our early dates, a photograph of me when I was 20, and a yellowed envelope with my name written in Richard's handwriting. My breath hitched. My fingers trembled as I lifted the envelope, the weight of it heavier than paper should be. My heart pounded in my chest. Why had he left me a letter? What could he have possibly needed to say from beyond the grave? Slowly, I unfolded it. Eleanor, my love, if you're reading this, I am already gone. And before you roll your eyes, yes, I know you hate dramatic letters from the beyond, but hear me out. I huffed, despite the lump forming in my throat. The man knew me too well. There is something I never told you, something I kept from you for many years. Not out of malice, but out of fear. Fear that I might lose you. And if you hate me for it, I understand. But you deserve to know the truth. My stomach twisted. What truth? Many years ago, before we were married, there was a letter. A letter that wasn't from me. It was from someone else, someone from your past. And I never gave it to you. I gripped the letter tighter. His name was Franklin. 50 years collapsed into a single moment. Franklin. I hadn't heard that name in decades, but it didn't matter. The moment I saw it, I was 22 again, sitting on the porch of my parents' house, waiting for a letter that never came. Franklin had been my first love. The kind of love that burns so fiercely you think it could outlast time itself. We had dreams, reckless and grand. He was supposed to meet me that night, and we were going to run away together. He had promised, but he never showed. Days turned to weeks, then months, then years. I told myself he had moved on, that he had simply forgotten me. Eventually, I convinced myself I had done the same. When Richard came into my life, steady and kind, I let myself love him. And I did love him, or at least I thought I had. But now Richard was telling me that Franklin had written to me, that there was a letter, and he had taken it. My hands shook with something I couldn't quite name. Anger, grief, betrayal. How could you do this to me, Richard? I forced myself to keep reading. I found his letter on our doorstep the night before I proposed to you. I read it. And Eleanor, he never abandoned you. He never meant to leave. His family sent him away, forced him to break contact with you. But he came back. He searched for you. And when he couldn't find you, he left that letter, hoping you would read it and come find him. But I took it. I sucked in a sharp breath. I was selfish. I wanted you to be mine. And I was afraid that if you read his words, you would leave me before I even had the chance to prove my love. So I kept it. and I buried the guilt for 50 years. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream at him, even though he wasn't here to hear it. If there is one thing I regret, it's this. I never told you because I was scared, and maybe that makes me a coward, but you deserve to know the truth. You still do. I love you, Eleanor. But maybe, just maybe, it's not too late for you to find the answers you've been waiting for. I lowered the letter onto my lap, my hands trembling. My mind was racing, but one thought kept repeating itself over and over. What if? What if Franklin had never meant to leave? What if we had never lost each other? What if it wasn't too late? Suddenly, I needed to find that letter, the one Richard had hidden all those years ago. I didn't know what I would do with it once I found it, but I knew I had to find it. I pushed myself up from the chair, my knees protesting as I marched up the attic stairs once more. The search was messy. Boxes were tossed aside, dust filled the air, and at one point, I stubbed my toe on something and cursed so loudly I was sure my neighbor would think I'd lost my mind. And then finally I found it. An old, faded envelope, buried at the bottom of a wooden box labeled miscellaneous. Seriously, Richard? Miscellaneous? I muttered, shaking my head. With trembling fingers, I opened the letter, and as I read Franklin's words meant for me but stolen by time, I felt my entire world shift beneath me. I must have read Franklin's letter 100 times, tracing the words with my fingertips as if they might somehow change, as if they might dissolve into dust and take this new reality with them. He had never abandoned me. He had searched for me. He had loved me. And Richard, my Richard, the man who had held my hand for nearly 50 years, had stolen that from both of us. Grief and anger tangled inside me, two forces at war. I wanted to scream at Richard, but he wasn't here to hear it. I wanted to demand answers, but there was no one left to give them. And yet, how could I hate a man who had spent his life loving me, who had built a home with me, grown old with me? Tears slipped down my cheeks. I wasn't sure if I was crying for Richard, for Franklin, or for the girl I had once been, the one who had waited on a porch for a letter that never came. I took a deep breath. One step at a time, Eleanor. The first step was finding Franklin, which, as it turned out, was much easier said than done. Technology, and I had never been on particularly friendly terms. I could send an email, sure. I had even learned how to online shop, much to my grandson's dismay every time I accidentally ordered 2 of something instead of 1. But searching for people? That was a whole different beast. I stared at my laptop screen, the Google homepage staring back at me, and sighed. All right, you infernal machine. Let's see what you can do. After a quick phone call to my grandson, who, bless his heart, patiently explained to me how to search for someone without sounding like I was trying to hire a private investigator, I typed in the name, Franklin Holloway. There were dozens of results. Some were obituaries, which made my heart lurch until I confirmed they weren't him. Some were younger men with the same name, people who had nothing to do with my Franklin. But then, finally, I found him. A small town just 100 miles away. A retirement community. A recent photo. A group of older men at some charity event. And there, standing at the edge of the crowd, was him. His hair was silver now. His face had softened with age. But those eyes, I would have known those eyes anywhere. My breath caught in my throat. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the screen, my hands frozen over the keyboard. What now? Call him? Send a message? Drive there unannounced like a woman who had completely lost her mind? In the end, I chose the least terrifying option. I sent a message. Franklin, I don't know if you remember me, but I think I owe you 50 years of an explanation. Eleanor. And then I waited. For an hour. Then two. Then a whole damn day. By the time I woke up the next morning, I had convinced myself he wasn't going to respond. Maybe he didn't check his messages. Maybe he had moved on, built a whole new life, left me behind again. Then, just as I was making my morning tea, my phone buzzed. Eleanor, I've been waiting 50 years for this message. When can I see you? I nearly knocked over the entire teapot. I grabbed my coat. The cafe was small, the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. It smelled of fresh coffee and warm pastries, and the wooden floors creaked with every step. It wasn't anything special, but somehow it felt right. I was early. I sat by the window, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea, trying to calm the nervous energy buzzing inside me. What would I say? What could I say? Then, the bell above the door chimed. And there he was. Franklin. He scanned the cafe, his eyes searching, and when they landed on me, his whole face softened. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he smiled. You haven't changed a bit, he said. I let out a laugh, shaking my head. You're a terrible liar. He chuckled, and just like that, 50 years melted away. We sat and talked for hours. About everything. About nothing. About the years we had lost and the lives we had lived. He had never married, never had children. He told me that no one had ever felt right after me. I looked for you, he said softly, for years. But I thought you had moved on. I thought you were happy. I looked down at my hands. I was happy, but I also spent 50 years thinking you had left me, that you had chosen to leave. His eyes darkened with regret. I never would have left you, Eleanor. Never. I believed him. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the weight of 5 decades pressing down on us. So what now? I finally asked. Franklin smiled, a little sad, a little hopeful. I don't know, but I do know this. I don't want to spend another day wondering about what ifs. I exhaled slowly, my heart lighter than it had felt in years. Neither do I. And just like that, life gave us a second chance. Maybe we couldn't rewrite the past, but we could still write the ending. And this time we would write it together.